There's an Easter egg behind me. My children have been here. Nothing is sacred. Hi, my name's Rachel, and today we're gonna chit chat about something. Today my makeup, which always comes at the request of my patrons now, because that's a thing I like to do. If you join my Patreon, you can tell me what makeup to wear. Within reason, today's makeup is David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. Fun fact, I was not allowed to watch anything or listen to anything or interact in any way with David Bowie. This is too bright. Because I grew up fundy and he made my parents uncomfortable. Gee, I wonder why. Now I think he's brilliant. Also, actually, look, matchy matchy. This is a queer book. This was James Brandon's debut about a kid who loves David Bowie, queer kid. So if you're looking for a David Bowie inspired book, it's cute because there's this, and then there's little lightning bolts at the beginning of every chapter, I believe. Yeah, little lightning bolts. So super cute. I tried to do the lightning bolt eyeliner and it just came out double wing. Didn't go great. Not my best work. I tried. Anyway, thanks to Penguin Teen for sending this to me. So if you're looking for something like that, you too can that. Today we're doing another Authors Behaving Badly, and I need you to settle in because this is going to be a very long one. I have been doing preliminary shit for this for weeks now. Well, I've been dabbling in it. I've been doing a lot of other things. And then I put this on the back burner for a solid week, and now I'm back at it. Anyway, today's Authors Behaving Badly is Brandon Fero. But this is not a typical Authors Behaving Badly video because most of you have probably never heard of this guy unless you are in the book talk community. There's not a ton of overlap on my YouTube channel with the book talk community. There is some, but not a ton. But that I still feel like this is a necessary video to make. Normally I would not make this kind of video. There are a lot of authors I don't do videos on. I get tagged in a lot of stuff and messaged a lot of stuff, which I always appreciate, letting me know what's going on in the community. And I, add people to a list, and I have people on a monitor this person for future issues list because there's some red flags. I don't typically do an Authors Behaving Badly unless there is something so egregious that an author has done or a series of shitty behaviors that I want to address. It really has to be either one of those in order for me to feel like it's worth my time to comb through an author's social media behavior and then take hours of my life to create content talking about why this is an issue and how to do better, yada yada. A lot of authors are simply awful to women. There are authors who lean right and have deeply concerning views about things like vaccines. They're straight up TERFs. A lot of those this week. I'm gonna need y'all to stop speaking, at least not where I can see you. I make these videos because I think that educated consumership is important and because my job is to inform and entertain, but I don't do videos on 95% of the things that I get sent. You've really got to do something shitty to end up here, right? Today's author, though, has been engaging in a cycle of behavior for years, over and over and over, literal years, particularly with women, for at least 2 years now, and I'm starting to get a little concerned about it. Fair warning, today we are watching a shit ton of TikToks, and I want y'all to bear with me through them. I am going to edit them down as much as I possibly can and also speed them up a little so that we don't have to listen to people drag on. I'm doing my best here. Consider this video whatever the non-academic version of a case study is. I feel very strongly that I need to speak up about this in particular just because I've watched several of my mutuals interact with him and it end poorly for them in that he makes them deeply uncomfortable, but also it's bigger than that because after deep diving into this guy's behavior and his interactions with men and women, or with women and men, particularly men who try to speak out about sexism and misogyny, and seeing the cycle over and over and over on his Twitter and his TikTok of him repeating certain patterns, I feel very strongly that I need to let other women know so that they can make the choice to protect themselves in any way that feels right to them, make boundaries, and hopefully this will stop the cycle at least for some women and also prevent this situation from escalating for certain people, which because of the particular rhetoric that this author espouses, I am concerned that this is heading in a kind of scary direction. We are seriously deep diving today. I'm not kidding. This was so much labor already and I'm just getting started filming it, so let's dive in because we're not only talking about this author and his interactions, we're also talking about the wider issues here with men's rights activism as a response to feminism and how that upholds systems and how it further harms both women and men. And this is an excuse for me to talk about bell hooks again. Who's predictable? It's me. Alright, let's read Brandon's Goodreads bio. Brandon Fero was born in the middle of a blizzard in February 1985. Raised in Indiana, Brandon is a longtime reader of everything from Louis L'Amour to Lisa Kleypas to Jason Anspach and Nick Cole and everything in between. I don't know who a single one of those people are. I'm a little worried that suddenly I'm not very good at my job, which is to be a book reviewer. He served 3 tours in Operation Iraqi Freedom and retains a deep love for his nation and its history, bruises and all. Bruises is an interesting way to talk about the United States history of imperialism. The Glorious series represents his first attempts at emulating his peers and betters, a full-length romance saga set in the War of 1812. He is the author of this historical romance book, A Glorious Enemy, which was published in September of 2020. He then published Whisper Flashpoint in 2021. Good grief. Which looks an awful lot like a Halo ripoff by the cover, but I digress. And he is the creator of the, I don't really know what to call this thing. Is it a movement if it's really just him? I'm not making fun of him, I'm just not really sure how to describe this. He created and uses the hashtag Men Love Romance too, which he uses mostly on TikTok, but sometimes on Twitter, and he also like signs off his TikToks, even if they're not related, by saying men love romance too, and like pieces out. And he's basically the only person I've seen using this hashtag. When I first saw him and saw him using this, I gave him the benefit of the doubt and thought, oh, that's cool. He's trying to like actively dismantle toxic masculinity by saying that men should not play into the stigma against romance novels and they should read it as well. Also, like kind of like making it like a romance is for everybody kind of thing, tackling the fact that romance is not seen as a valid genre because mostly women read it. Like, let's stop shitting on things that are enjoyed predominantly by women and girls, which is a lot of what we saw and even I engaged in at the time because I was a stupid idiot, of like making fun of Twilight just because it was seen as cool to like, oh, let's make fun of something that a lot of girls and women like. Like, Twilight is not good in my opinion, but it's not good because women like it. Wow, okay, I know how to speak English correctly, but I was wrong. Here's how he describes why he uses Men Love Romance too.
Yes, I am a fucking author, self-published. And yes, my hashtag is Men Love Romance too, because I try and normalize men actually reading romance and reviewing it, and not having women jump down their throats whenever they fucking speak.
I was not kidding when I said we're gonna watch a lot of TikToks today. But stay with me because I'm going to use Brandon's TikToks and his tweets, a little bit of his tweets, to showcase his patterns of behavior and the rhetoric that he uses and make the case that this man is a men's rights activist, which is an ideology that I find deeply troubling. At, you know, first glance here, whatever, you might think like, sure, men deserve rights and activism is good. Men's rights activism is an ideology, and I'll talk about what it exactly is and why it's a problem in a second. Well, not in a second, in several minutes. But also this book, this video is, as I said, an excuse for me to talk extensively about bell hooks and her amazing book on masculinity, which I have already talked about, but all of that is coming shortly. First, I have to give a little background into how I fell down this rabbit hole of Men Love Romance to Brandon Fero. I am not personally involved in Brandon's odd treatment of women. I am blocked by Brandon currently though, vice versa. But it was so weird. It was not because of it was because of nothing. It was so weird. And I want to say this as a disclaimer so that in case like anybody asks like, you know, why do you have this guy blocked? This is what happened. Just like, it has nothing to do with what I'm going to say for the rest of the video. Basically nothing. I'm just going to say what happened and moved on. It was so quick and so stupid and I'm just going to move on after I explain. Okay. So after my first account got deleted from TikTok is right after then is when I first saw Brandon. I remember him following me and like being like, oh, you know, your account got deleted. A lot of accounts were getting deleted at the same time. It was like a really weird coincidence. The book talk community was really nice enough to like help me out and I got like a lot of new followers. I was able to start going on lives again. It was really nice. Brandon was included in this and he was nice to me as far as I remember. I don't remember us talking very much, but after this I forgot about him as far as I could tell. I did not think about him until when this happened, this whole thing where he ended up in my comments in December, which was like 4 months ago. I had posted a TikTok in fucking November, right? And I'll just show you it because it's actually, it's kind of funny.
The Bible is the word of God, so if you can't hear God, just read the Bible.
Song of Solomon 4:5-6. Your breasts are perfect. They are twin deer feeding among lilies. I will hasten to those hills sprinkled with sweet perfume and stay there until sunrise. Thanks, God. So for absolutely no reason whatsoever, a month later, Brandon showed up in my TikTok comments and he was upset. I don't have screenshots of what he said. I vaguely recall what he said. And what happened was he saw me talking about the Bible and saw people in my comments talking about the Bible, and he took that fucking personally. I don't know why. It was so weird. He was responding to several fucking comments on that video and talking to me directly and being like passive aggressive, sort of. He responded to one of the comments saying laughs in Christian male or something like that. I answered, I have screenshots of what I said because that's still up. It says, "Are you for real? Are you having a stroke?" And he was arguing with this person who said that the Bible it was verbal history that was passed down. It's a game of telephone. And it is. And he took that personally because he is a Christian, and it's fine to be a Christian. It's not okay to act like this. And somebody else had said, "I didn't think Sappho wrote any prose," as a response to my TikTok. And Brandon said something that was upset. He mentioned Song of Solomon, which I had referenced in my video. And I told this person, don't even bother. He's being fucking weird for no reason, which I stand by. He responded to me saying, "Never mind, I see you unfollowed me." And I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I did. I don't follow people that are doing fundy shit, which is what this feels like. And he blocked me like instantly. So I blocked back and I was like, cool, must be a fundy. I don't want fundies here anyway, because you know who I am. Grew up cult adjacent, so I don't want that shit. Well, then I got messages from people being like, hey, that dude's actually a serial misogynist. And I was flabbergasted because I had no fucking clue. And then I moved on and I did not think about him until a mutual of mine was suddenly making content referencing him. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? I know that guy. That guy was upsetty spaghetti in my comments. So several weeks ago, a mutual of mine named KB, who is an author, started talking about inappropriate behavior from a guy. And I saw this on Twitter. Suddenly, Brandon Fero is getting stitched and popping up in my feed again. And initially I was like, this is ridiculous that this cycle is repeating itself again, that he's getting into it with somebody. I'm seeing his comments everywhere, which is like the same thing that happened with me, but for a totally different reason, because he was not being a misogynist in my comments. He was just being weird and like fundy adjacent. But the misogyny was like, oh, that's weird. And then remembering that people had said, hey, he's a serial misogynist, and that I had seen what he had said to other women, I was like, so he's just like repeating this like misogynist cycle again. Why? Stay with me here, because this is a pattern, and all of it is a pattern. And KB is just the most recent person that it happened to, or the most recent woman that it happened to. And in isolation, it's a shitty thing. But the fact is, the pattern, the cycle, that's why we're here. That's why I'm doing this video, because I would like to avoid another woman going through this. KB became mutuals with Brandon in November 2021. Brandon mutuals with her, starts DMing her. He apparently does this with many people, predominantly women, according to the mass amount of women who have messaged me about him. The first message was November 16th of 2021. He starts contact with her. KB posts this video in December, and in it, it clearly shows a dude's arm, right? She even tagged her man in the comments, who's her now husband. Brandon comments on this video and says, impressive, which is an odd thing to say. So he definitely saw that dude's arm, right? I just want to make that clear because it's going to be incredibly relevant in a second. KB's TikToks on this are gone, so I'm going to give you the best rundown that I can. So what happened was Brandon would regularly message KB, and already doing this thing that we're also seeing this right now with the guy who did Terrifying Tomes of Terror, where guys feel like they can test the waters by messaging like borderline inappropriate stuff, and women feel like if I say anything, then it's going to make it awkward for everybody. That's shitty and abusive. You can see like in one of his messages, Brandon tests the waters where he says they're talking about Eros, who is an audiobook narrator, and he said, I've listened to his voice. I get why women would find it arousing. Some women would say the same of mine. I'm flattered, but I ain't got the equipment, and frankly, I'm embarrassed because I'm from such a conservative background. Basically like fishing for compliments, and this is not appropriate. KB said, I've never financially supported Eros or participated in his work. I follow social media and like the content as it pops up, but I did financially support everyone else. And they were talking about, I think, the whole Dana Isley thing. I don't remember exactly. Then in June, right after the whole whole Roe v. Wade being overturned thing, which, by the way, Brandon can also be found in Good Trouble's comments at this time, basically saying that he doesn't care about this because conservatives are working and stuff. Just utterly ridiculous nonsense, where he says, if that's your best response, then I'm sorry this bill was a blow to you personally, but I'm struggling already in life. You mean that the fact that I'm not rage farming, I'm responding it directly as a human being, and using his ADHD and autism spectrum disorder to try to, like, assuage any guilt he has, which is ridiculous. Anyway, in June, when he's talking about he says, I'm sorry about everything going on. Are you sorry? Because in Good Trouble's comments, you were clearly not sorry and didn't give a shit about how this affected people with uteruses. But okay, I digress. He said, open my messages and see your shirt strategically placed, LOL. And what he's talking about is this, because she was wearing a pro-choice shirt and it's her boobs. Like, great. I mean, like, it's not even cleavage. Like, I'm really confused. But anyway, it was strategically placed, he said, and that's weird as fuck. Like, you don't say that shit. KB didn't say anything about it at the time. From the previous screenshots, you know that he knows that she has a man. So the fact that he put her in this position that she should have been put in at all was completely inappropriate. He never should have messaged her about her titties. He never should have said anything trying to bait her into saying, yeah, you have a sexy voice. Like, it was all inappropriate. The baseline is that you do not talk to women like this, and you don't get to, like, complain, oh, I didn't know she had a man, and oh, I was just being nice. Like, this is always what we go through. We always have to apologize for men hitting on us and not us not wanting to be hit on. And that's what happened. That's the sum and whole of what happened. But as we can see next, Brandon did not want to admit that. Obviously, this is a while ago. This is several months back, okay? So why is this getting brought up again? Because KB is not the only woman that Brandon has had issues with, but men also end up having issues with Brandon, but only one kind of men, and it is male feminists, men who are feminists. And it's always Brandon who instigates these fights with men who are feminists. And that is another red flag.
Why do men hate women? What's this there then already shared the conclusion?
The history is good. The conclusions are wonky. And, of course, the opening line, men hate women. No, men don't hate women. Men hate abusers. Men hate manipulators. And too often women will say manipulation is not as bad as, say, rape. Okay, fair. But manipulation is far more widespread. And it's allowed on a societal level far more than, say, grape. You're also aware that I have a different outlook on the current brand of feminism that you particularly espouse. But since you want to bring up, men's rights activists and men don't really, and misogynists don't, they don't really want to hear you out, I will give you my ear. You're mocking a man for loving his wife, come what may, for supporting LGBT. No. See, I'm not mocking Speech Prof. I legitimately think he's not a fighter. I legitimately don't see a fighter when I see him. That's point blank, period. I'm not mocking him. I'm refuting him to his face.
What they're competing with is the peace that women feel in solitude.
Here's a hot take for you there, Speech Prof. Men have already been used to having solitude. That's nothing new for us. But we do know that it's lonely. Here's the other hot take. If women are so happy in their solitude, don't date. Don't comment on dating. Leave it alone. Leave those of us who are actually seeking to go find our one. And no, you don't get to dictate from the sidelines on who we date. Evitable, this has to be one of the worst takes I've ever seen you comment under any man's subject section, and that's saying something. You're literally gaslighting this dude who actually opened up and explained to his sisters that he's tired of being used. He's tired of no-hitters when it comes to going out on dates and finding no one of interest. And instead, literally, you gaslight him here. You gaslight him. You're like, what do you want him to say? They're his family. Listen, comprehend, not simply accuse him of being an incel, a misogynist. I mean, I don't know, that might be a fucking thing. This has to be one of those times where I see your face in the comment section and just go, I'm just not fucking surprised anymore. And one would think that with your past, cheating on your wife, writing a book about it, selling it, then finally finding Jesus, or in your case, I guess, feminism, and finally saying, oh, I fucked up. Let me become a outspoken feminist so I can make up for what I did.
That's funny, because 150 years ago, it was the nuclear family that was destroying.
I have a genuine question. Brett. Actually, I have a couple, but I'm going to keep them short. How do you equate the Industrial Revolution and monopolies with there being some sort of organized movement by men to sublimate women in the Industrial Revolution? Then I want you to explain how in the last 10,000 years there was an organization of men that sublimated women. There wasn't. Those were the royals. Third question, how is it that women are saying in those comments, and if y'all go back to those comments, you'll see what I'm saying. It's pretty nasty in there. How are they saying they've evolved past men, but they want to be equal to men when they post themselves up as superior to men?
Yo, good morning. Let's talk about this a little bit too.
Leo, I spent the last couple days seeing your videos. I took some time to look at the comments. Comments like this, I get that, but consider whether we should give our emotional labor to people who actively oppress us. It's all about deconstruction of pre-programmed mentality. It's more heated here. I don't see it on other platforms. And then, of course, the final one at the bottom, which is a real classic, how does it feel? Which is to say, how does it feel to be marginalized or oppressed or treated as an equal, as they like to say? My overall reaction to all of this is, it feels like I'm back in high school, listening to a bunch of wannabe popular girls talk about which jock is getting banged by which cheerleader, which one's a slut, and which weirdo needs to be mocked next. So take this back to the ladies on your side of TikTok. For all the mocking and all the bullshit, how the hell are these men oppressing you? And then the next question, who do you think we are? Do you honestly believe that we are reprogrammable? Human beings are not computers. And I'm sorry that you feel the need to try and speak up and have men heal under this quote-unquote left-wing touchy-feely. I'm so sorry that you feel this way, but it's all because of this, patriarchy, this illusion, rather than just accepting that hurt people, and that the massive number of women that are in your comments are the exact same ones who would dog men out every single chance they could get. And you went on to say that you would even allow these women, feminists, to enter into your Discord as a male safe space so that they could listen. And one of the commenters even said, they can't expect us not to respond with trauma. I'm sorry, ladies, since when were we your therapists?
Most recent, it was a guy named Brett. He also tries to pick fights with lots of people, even Good Trouble. Like, he's in Good Trouble's comments trying to fight with that guy. Like, lots of men feminists. He also really doesn't fucking like Drew off Willow, which is another red flag for me. Looking into this, I was like, wait, what the fuck is the issue with Brett? Who's Brett? Sorry, Brett. Brett must have said something to Brandon to piss him off, right? Wrong. This is one of the patterns we're going to talk about today. Nothing was said to Brandon. That's why it's weird. I dug through Brandon's TikTok and I didn't even dig all the way. I just went to January. Yes, I used my husband's login. Sue me. I needed to dig this time. I don't typically go on people's profiles after I've blocked them or after they've blocked me, but in this particular case, I make an exception for women's safety. Sorry. Typically, I block people and I never think about them again. Especially like authors, because I block lots of authors, even ones I haven't interacted with, because if I review their book negatively, I don't want to hear from them and I know they're not going to want to hear from me, so I'm just like, let's just close this door and never reopen. But unfortunately, I had to use Carlos's TikTok for this one because I felt like it was necessary. Anyways, all that to say, what did Brett say to piss off Brandon? Were they talking? What happened? Here it is.
Because I don't have to, Charles. I don't have to abide by your standard just so you feel comfortable. And what are you doing to contribute and actually show that you're a good man? Actions speak louder than words. And what this comment is telling me is that you want to take a passive approach to this, which is helping literally nobody. You're only worried about how this makes you feel. That makes you selfish and not actually a good man. I don't have to abide by your standard just—
Brett, there's something you need to understand about being neurodivergent. Shouting at the camera and then playing it off as feminism does not evoke good feelings in me. It's like nails on chalkboard, okay? You want to get your point across, you want to show you're serious, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But understand that most men are going to look at you and question where the hell you're coming from, straight up, because most men live the life of dealing with threats every single day to their lives. It's inherent. No one ever told us everything's going to be safe and fine, everything's going to be nice and kind. No, we were taught very early on, there will be bullies, there will be assholes, but the point was to not be an asshole yourself.
He was talking to someone else about men's behavior, and out of absolutely fucking nowhere, just like my interaction with him actually, Brandon shows up and takes everything personally, but it's more than just self-centered, it's obvious MRA rhetoric. I want to point out here that he says feminism because fucking yikes. Brett never said the word feminism anyway, so this is just like red flags all over the fucking place. Secondly, I want to point out, other people have talked about the tone policing of Brett. It's not really just tone policing. It is tone policing, sure. He literally says he can't listen because Brett talks loudly. You could just scroll on, whatever. The problem is he starts with literal tone policing, but then he moves on to respectability politics, talking about what Brett said and saying the way that Brett said it is the problem. and that men are not going to respond to it well. And this is another thing that Brandon does regularly, is respectability politics. Telling people, particularly women and then men who espouse any feminist beliefs, if you only would just say what you want to say a certain way, then I would respect you. That's respectability politics. And it's not true. It's never true. They're not going to respect you either way. They don't like what you're saying, not how you're saying it. There is no way for you to say it for them to finally say, yes, let's address that. It's a red herring. It's to distract and diminish from the actual problem so that we never have to address it. We're always going to stay on the topic of how you're saying this stuff. We're never going to talk about how we got to these problems. And the respectability politics was a huge red flag for me. He then moves on to the other cycles that he goes through, which are, first of all, he demands that everybody he disagrees with, why don't you go live with me? I invited you to go live with me. Go live with me. Go live with me. And I'm like, why do you do that? That's weird. That's weird as hell. Some people do end up going live with him. If you're in this situation with him, I would deeply encourage you to not do so. Don't do that.
Brett, I'm going to stitch my comment here and I'm going to have a quick chat with you because you said, the common denominator is me. Hit dogs holler. Is that what you said? Here, let me explain something. You hit a dog long enough, it bites, right? You know what else they say when you hit a dog? It's animal abuse. I am sick to death of being a tool for somebody else. The fact that I actually have boundaries now should tell you something. The fact that my mouth keeps running should tell you something. It should tell you that I have convictions. Now, Brett, I get that you think that I'm making you out to be the bad guy, but I'm not. If I wanted to make you out to be the bad guy, I would have name called you more often, which I didn't. I did say that your voice was grating and your attitude was shit, which, to be frank, in that video that I stitched, it was. But I'm not making you out to be the bad guy, okay? Now, KB's a different story because KB, I know her. I also know her attitude. And yes, I did see the video where she stitched and said, oh, well, be a better author. My man, when I say that some of these women are manipulative, I'm not lying to you. I wish that you would actually address that. But and here's the thing, I can't encourage you to do it because if you do, they will roast you to hell and gone unless you toe the line with every single video. That's it. That's all there is to it. So once again, I'm not making you out to be the bad guy. I don't think you're evil. I think you have good points in some of your stuff. I would personally just prefer if you would stand up for men once in a while, as often as you stand up for women. If you would do that, if you would actually encourage that, of course, there's another problem with that. And you want to know what it is? It's that anything that encourages people will typically almost always not get as much engagement because people want to feel right, especially certain types of people who want to manipulate and make themselves out to be great authors. I don't say I'm a great author. I don't say I write better than women. I just write and I read and review. That's it. All right, my man. And again, my live is open if you want to come on. You all know I was arguing with you and you decided to bring up the ladies of Book Talk. Now, Book Talk has gotten a little bit of recent screen time with the CEO talking about how they encourage reading. Spicy Book Talk, well, not so much, but let's get into this. You say, that I was harassing KB. And this comment right here says, I know like 50 people that he mildly flirted with. Truly traumatic. There was another comment in here that I have a screenshot of where the same commenter says Brandon is the worst. Now, I just have, it gets me a little bit when they say mildly flirted. There is such a thing as paying a compliment. And I guess compliments count as flirting now. I opened up with KB and KB decided to send me a response. Laughter filled and mocking me and saying, sorry for the jump scare besties, while saying that she's a better author because she's put out a 200-page erotica versus my 150,000, word novel that's actually romance. Okay, that's her standard. Bully for her. And Brett, I invited him on a live twice and I tried talking to him and what I got instead was mockery. By the way, his last video where he called me a dumbass, yeah, I reported that one for hateful behavior and if TikTok actually took it down. So if you go back to him and you want to tell him that I did that, you go right ahead. It really doesn't hold any power over me anymore. What I will say is that you saying that I'm not owed anything, it says a lot that you've continued on commenting about this over a week after that exchange. Apparently there is something there. You see, I mirror the energy that was given to me. KB was arrogant. Brett was arrogant. I mirrored that energy. They didn't like it. Big surprise considering their tactics. You don't get to cover up your arrogance with feminism and say it's justified. You don't get to cover up your contempt with arrogance and feminism and say you're justified. Okay? I tried being humble. I tried being kind. I tried explaining. And what I got for it was just a whole lot of headache, a whole lot of name calling. And for what? Ultimately, what does it prove? That they don't like me. And now they're not required to like me, but I'm not required to like them either. Specifically their brand of quote unquote feminism. Because if it was feminism, they would be treating me as an equal. They would be actually apologizing for their words as well. You don't see them doing that.
He also does the same things, not only demands the people he disagrees with go live with him on TikTok, he also does this thing where he says, everything that women go through, men go through either equally or they deal with a similar but more widespread thing.
Kid, I'm not your therapist. I'm not your mommy, da-da-da-da-da. They will emasculate men. They will try to minimize men down to the worst of the bare minimum. They'll do it. in a heartbeat. And then they'll say they're advocating while hiding a snarky undertone and smirking over at their friend. And this is well documented.
Well documented by whom? By what study? Because I don't think there's actual documentation of that. I'm pretty sure that's something he just observed and decided was a mass issue. Carry on.
If my guys are really feeling bad, I want them to be able to call the crisis hotline. I want them to be able to open up and speak to the problems that they're going through. But I know damn good and well that the mass of the public and society as a whole does not view men that way. Not even the women.
Grand model Courtney Taylor.
What is mind-boggling to me is you can have something that is like so apparently wrong, like it is wrong, this should have not happened, but then you have people in the comment section promoting it. Granted, the comments on this video is cut off. There is a stitch where a guy did it and showed screenshots of the comments. With that, there was tons of women being like, yes, queen energy, boss babe, because this woman stabbed her boyfriend, when clearly the article is showing that it wasn't under self-defense. She just stabbed him because she wanted to. But we all know dang well that if the tables were turned and a man did this, he'd be getting eaten alive by the internet, but a woman does it and it's supposedly excusable or not viewed as something wrong. Like, the double standard is ridiculous. Like, people need to do better. And for the people promoting her, what the is wrong with you?
Because I guess you guys have to hear something from a man.
No, ma'am. And to all your commenters, no. You say something about, oh, it's all about ego. Ma'am, I tried asking out 10 out of 10s. Would you like to guess what they said? No. And some of them did pull that, well, how do you put it? That ego burn? Yeah, not fun. Not fun at all. Men love romance too. So here's the thing for you ladies. This is something that this is gonna burn your britches a little bit. I don't rate you the same way you think you do, okay? You can be a 10 out of 10, but if you act it, you're ugly, okay? If you act like a drama-seeking person, if you act like a backstabber, if you act like you're too good for the rest of humanity, then yes, to me, you are ugly, okay? So I dealt with women who, some guys, they'd say, well, that's mid or that's mediocre. But most of those guys would be saying that because that's not their preference. To me, they were my preference. And I was shot down many, many, many times. Now, again, most were good, but there was that 10% out of the 1,500 who would then proceed to look at me like I was slime, or the aftermath of like the very few times when I actually did get to have something going on, and then come to find out that said person was actually just, well, as you would say, using me for a placeholder. I don't think that women really understand that men do have emotional intelligence. We also have emotional constructs in place for when we find out that, oh, well, it wasn't what we thought. It's just amazing because the internet is now making it widely available for everyone to see just how territorial women are, even bisexual women, about how they are with their partners. So, ladies, the next time that y'all are getting up on your girls support girls stuff, remember this, and then think twice about how you treat other men who are just strangers. There's a reason we get territorial.
Earth than a man knowing you make money and then treating you like an
Sweet Jesus almighty. Hey, everybody, you want to see the comments on this? That's why we lie. Biggest turnoff. I act broke. So worried about being used for their money until you have more money, then it's, why do I need you again? Oh, I don't. Are you dating the man to marry him, or are you just getting dick on demand? I can't.
Has been built by men, it is upheld by men, and yet men have...
I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to ask the ladies to stop and listen, and I'm going to ask the young men to stick around for just a second. Number one, you say, this world was built by men. No. This world was built by people. If y'all think that women didn't have an effect in history, you're lying to yourselves. Number two, you say that young women are aware of what's going on with young men, but they don't get through to young men. The reason why young women don't get through to young men is because oftentimes young men are looking at young women and seeking romantic intentions, when young women just want to be platonic friends. What you're talking about is pre-selection. Basically, you become friends with a man, and thus that man now has an advocate. Okay, are you starting to understand my point? I even had this stated to me several times when I entered into conversation with ladies earlier, saying I needed an advocate and I needed people who would tell women that I was a safe space for women. I'm sorry. Explain this to me again. So the young men have to somehow come out of their shells when they have no purpose, expose themselves to women who could then just as easily turn on them and backstab them, and give them all the ammunition to emotionally destroy them, just for the chance that that they'll actually do as they say and tell their friends, no, he's a good one. Yeah, you should definitely date him. You catch my drift yet? There's a risk versus reward thing in there. The other thing that you don't mention is purpose. Men need to have a purpose. So, boys, I'm going to tell you like this. Find your purpose, whether it's to create art, whether it's to write books, whether it's to be great at a game or great in just seeing a new facet of the world and showing it to us all. Find your purpose, but don't find it just in only a woman.
That's not a man thing. Wait, oh shit, this is Fundy rhetoric. Jess Corbin did this in her book, A Gentle Tyranny. God, that book never stopped haunting me. Jess Corbin made the inaccurate case in her books that men have testosterone and therefore are more goal-oriented and more ambitious. Men need a purpose. Men need something to drive them. That is not a man thing. That is just some humans are like that thing. It has nothing to do with testosterone, nothing to do with being a man. And you're not more or less of a man based on that. Carry on.
You also say here, women advocate for men to seek therapy and get help. Too often, I will see women weaponize that phrase. They will call men fragile. They will call them weak. They will call them baby. When I was in the military, I was around a bunch of guys, a bunch of young 20-somethings, jacked up, going to war. So yeah, there were bad jokes. Occasionally I would say, yo man, not cool. But mostly it was venting and blowing off steam. Then there were the times when I saw my guys get divorce papers from 6,000 miles away, and our government is not going to allow a woman to divorce in the military without getting her cut. I watched men get divorced from 6,000 miles away, and inside of 18 hours, they were expected to put their body armor back on, pick up their weapon, get their vehicles ready, and go out for another mission where they might die after being told by their lady, the woman that they vowed to marry. I can't take it anymore. Supporting women to make a choice about their body. In what way? Define for me what choice you want. Because if that's your choice, that's your choice. What about my choice? What about other men's choices? Are we somehow just nothing but trash? Is that what it is? Men are trash? Because that's the popular take today, and it upsets me. It upsets me a lot. But because I get upset, they would turn around and then mock me, or they would define me as a misogynist. Anything to dismiss me or others like me. That is damn close to bigotry. As far as women's choice with their bodies, do what you will. Go ahead. But don't shame men for doing the same.
And that is MRA rhetoric, 100%. MRA stands for men's rights activists. Most men's rights activists in the United States are white, cisgender, heterosexual dudes. And the MRAs is part of the manosphere. They are in the manosphere, which includes incels, but MRAs and incels are not the same. I would not call Brandon Fero an incel. I know a lot of people have, and I get the urge to call him that, but I think what is the actual accurate term for him is a MRA. They differ from incels. Incels think that they are like owed sex from women and they hate women for that. Men's rights activists think that women ignore men's issues. Both are part of the manosphere, which is an internet phenomenon, but they are not the same. Men's rights activism is a reactionary movement. It's backlash against feminism. And what they do is they focus on social issues and specific like government services that they feel, and it's not always correct because they believe a lot of incorrect stuff, like statistically inaccurate, that like adversely affect men or discriminate against men and boys, including family law, so like child support and alimony they feel are rigged against men and boys. Circumcision is an issue that they bring up, which I'm not going to get into here, but like I don't disagree. I feel like that's kind of largely cosmetic in the United States, so like I get like wanting to push for less of it. I get that. I agree. Education they feel is skewed against men. Conscription into the military, which I agree, but the United States doesn't currently do that. Health and wellness, so medicine and social programs, social safety nets. But they refuse, even when some of these things are issues, right? Not all of that is incorrect. A lot of it is, but not all of it. They refuse to believe that the problem is patriarchy. They do this like, it's both sides. Men oppress women. Yeah, sure, I guess sometimes. But women, they're oppressing men. They refuse to believe that the problem is patriarchy, which does affect everyone, including men and boys. Bell Hooks talks about this, and if men's rights activists would just read Bell Hooks one time. But MRAs want so badly to have their patriarchy cake and eat it too, meaning not having any responsibility of their own. And when they see that these issues in society, they are only seeing them, they are only acknowledging these issues because they want the opportunity to say, hey women, we suffer too. Not, hey feminists, let's group together and address the root of these issues so that all can benefit. So when they see feminists, both men and women, discussing issues of how men oppress women, they immediately react negatively. And that's what happened between Brandon and Brett. Simply put, it was not I don't like how loud you're being, I don't like the way you're saying this. It was what Brett was saying that set Brandon off, and that's very obvious. Brett and Brandon get into it over several TikToks.
What I said is factual for a lot of men. They don't get told from a very early age that the world is nice. They don't get told that the world is just handed to you on a silver platter. No, that's not what men get. What I do give a fuck about is this bullshit right here that you liked. I'm gonna let that one sit for just 3 seconds so everybody can read it. You wanted to see a pissed off Brandon Fero? Now you've seen one. Congratulations. Yes, I am a fucking author, self-published. And yes, my hashtag is Men Love Romance too, because I try and normalize men actually reading romance and reviewing it, and not having women jump down their throats whenever they fucking speak. My Own is a Glorious Enemy, by me. It's the first book in a 4-book series. The Glorious series. That is the last time that I will hear from your followers about how I'm a creep. But as for you, Brett, I hope you feel satisfied in knowing that you literally just showed your ass to a veteran and to all my followers and to the whole world.
And then Brett brings up what happened to KB, between KB and Brandon, months earlier.
You reached out to her as a male feminist to try and get her side of the story without asking me what my side of the story was. Like a typical backstabber.
Brandon then insinuates a whole bunch of stuff, first saying KB never made it clear she was taken. Bruh, you commented. What do you mean? Like, first of all, he's like, she never made her boundaries clear. And as a woman, watching this play out was fucking just goddamn disturbing.
Oh, hi, KB. And yeah, you know damn good and well that you never communicated boundaries to me. You see, you established boundaries. I made one flirty remark about your t-shirt being placed, on the camera. And you didn't say shit. It takes exactly 10 seconds to type out, Brandon, I'm married, in DMs. Exactly 10 seconds. Especially for a fast typer like yourself. You didn't. And somebody else is like, well, she was giving you the cold shoulder treatment, or it's fuck off asshole vibes. I don't fucking care. Okay? You are responsible for your own end of communication. God, this is the miscommunication trope of every fucking romance novel there is.
And then when somebody pointed out that KB never should have gotten a message about her breasts from Brandon in the fucking first place, like that should have been baseline, right? It shouldn't have been, I'm gonna message you about your breasts unless you tell me you're taken. The baseline is don't message women about their boobies. He is not owed verbalized boundaries about her titties. Like that's not, no, just no. Especially in a respectful way after he's already done it. Because again, he never should have messaged her about her tatas ever at all. No, it's violating. Anyway, married or not. Anyway, after all this, he says this.
Women don't owe you anything. They don't owe you maturity. They don't owe you communication, loyalty, friendship, anything, nothing. That is not in any way, shape, or form close to a concept of adulting. If you are networking with somebody, if you are communicating with somebody at first, and you are working off friendly terms, then there is a purview for responsibility and communication, okay? And yes, we're adults. You're not in 5th grade anymore. So maturity is to be expected. Yes. I don't know where this comes from. This sounds more like an excuse that is adjacent to boys will be boys. And we all know how y'all feel about that one.
And that's when I really fucking started getting the ick. Something about the respectability politics, once again, of, in particular, this part.
If you are networking with somebody, if you are communicating with somebody at first, and you are working off friendly terms, then there is a purview for responsibility.
That, and combined with the tu quoque logical fallacy here, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and the equating women should have to tell you we don't want sexual messages with boys will be boys, equating those two things, and the us versus them way this was spoken, alarm bells ringing. That's when I was like, maybe I need to message KB about this. I also posted about it and I got some comments saying, hey, this is but one of the women that he has been completely inappropriate with. And then I said, okay, if this happened to you with him, if you had a negative interaction with him and you're a woman, DM me what happened. Like, tell me what happened. And I'll keep everybody anonymous. Just tell me what the fuck happened. Something here is not right, and I fear where it leads for the next inevitable woman, because this is a years-long pattern. And make no mistake, there are already others. It's not just KB. Like, take a look at some of the available spats or still available spats or attempted spats on his part between him and other women. I'm gonna read you messages that I got. I'm keeping everybody anonymous for their safety, but these are the messages that I got from women who dealt with uncomfortable online behavior that for legal purposes I will not out loud to refer to as harassment. Messages I will read to you verbatim. Keep in mind that this is just the handful of women that was willing to talk to me. It's possible that there are others out there who maybe deleted their TikToks, maybe stopped posting on Book Talk, maybe who knows, but statistically it's likely that there are others.
This is from person
Person number one says, we were originally mutuals. He would come into my DMs multiple times a week to complain about other women treating him poorly. Usually it was that he had overstepped their boundaries and they were feeling unsafe around him and putting up walls. He thought they were personally victimizing him. Time after time, I tried to talk him down and explain that women have to be cautious of all men, and that when you have been victimized by one man, you are cautious and skeptical of others, that he, as a member of a group that continually oppresses and victimizes women, should spend his energy helping other men learn to treat women with respect rather than making hate videos about women who call him out for his bullshit. He wasn't interested in that. He just wanted to play the victim. He's also a white nationalist. He believes very much in the supremacy and greatness of America, that our country does God's will on earth. He used to be pretty quiet about it, and I didn't see it until the end when I blocked him. I don't know if he's out and proud about it now. He's a little homophobic too. I know my story is similar to so many others. He comes on strong with a sob story of trauma and PTSD, but I do not believe he has those. But those are not an excuse for treating others like shit and continually using women as emotional punching bags that he can discard the moment they disagree with him. I don't know personally, this is Rachel speaking, I don't know personally whether or not Brandon has PTSD or trauma from serving in the military. I have no idea. What I can tell you is that my husband Carlos was in the military and he would never get a pass from me to act this way just because he has trauma from that. As far as white nationalist rhetoric, the only thing that I found that was close to that, but I'm not sure that this is actually white nationalist rhetoric, is this.
You're obviously a blank profile. Somebody who probably thought this was a good joke. Or maybe y'all don't treat it like a joke. But allow me to say this. In all my years of studying history and in my time of living in history, I can say this. I've never actually hated Muslims for what happened at 9/11. I never hated Catholics for what they did to Protestants back in the day. I've never hated pagans for what they did back in the day. I've never hated atheists for what they did back in the day. And if you don't think that atheism hasn't done anything, I would refer you to Joseph Stalin, okay? And I don't hate the Jews because, oh, they crucified Christ. No, their ancestors crucified Christ, okay? They are not their ancestors.
Pretty sure that's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory / dog whistle, but okay.
It is amazing to me because I see the same discourse in feminism when they say, well, men built the world. No, people built the world. Men and women. Women had a hand in history. I see all of your ideologies. I see all of you equally. So when somebody says that Christianity is a white trash, genocidal, racist religion, I see the exact same dialogue, rhetoric, and dogma repeated all throughout history from every ideology. And I still will come to you and treat you as a human first, as a soul first, okay? The only time that I ever meet anybody on unworthy circumstances or with an unworthy attitude is when I see arrogance. Because I remember a quote from Proverbs, the fool says in his heart there is no God. And the fool is not somebody who is mentally incapable. The fool is not somebody who's stupid. The fool is the arrogant one. So I mirror that energy, if you will. If this strikes you enough to make you pause and reflect on your future discourse with others, I pray it so. Give a little back. Show some respect. You'll be better off for it. Godspeed.
Person number 2 says, the full story is that he followed me and I followed him back in mid-2022. He made a video asking TikTok for money. I'm not sure if it's still on his page, but I was going to donate to him, but I like to know who I'm helping, and I didn't know him well at that point, so I went and watched a bunch of his videos all the way back to like March of 2022. Then I searched his name on TikTok and I found some disturbing things, and when I searched him, a lot of really awful, disgusting, and women-hating rhetoric came up. So I started following the train of comments and videos linked to the ones I found. It boiled down to him going into random women's comment section to start a fight or make response videos to them that were just degrading and just shitting on women and their experiences. Lots of, I was in the military, I have trauma too, and so many women have rejected me and I'm a nice guy. Those women are all terrible. And he even has a video, not sure if it's still up, where he stitched a guy that was explaining why feminism is bad and men shouldn't be feminists, and Brandon said he loved the guy even though the guy was LGBTQ. It was a really homophobic thing to say. So I made a video calling him out for all this shit because at that point he had asked the community of Book Talk that he was trying so hard to be a part of for money, and I thought they should know who they were helping. He of course saw my video and wanted to go live. The weird part was that the live I did with him was really good. I just want to chime in as Rachel for a second and say, from what I have witnessed, he asks every single person who he has beef with to go live with him. And if you choose not to, it seems like he almost tries to guilt trip you into doing it, which I feel is really insidious. Anyways, moving on. He listened to my thoughts in the live. I listened to his. He said that he had recently found out he was on the spectrum and social norms were always hard, and I told him he needs to set aside his own experiences when talking to a woman because his trauma does not negate theirs. Another person joined us and we just had this really great 2-hour in-depth talk about all this stuff, so I gave him a second chance, bought his book, It's Awful, and everything seemed to be fine until his friend came at me in the comments of an author who was defending Kate Stewart. I do have a video on Kate Stewart, link below if you want some context for that. I'm pretty sure the author in question that this person is talking about is Renee Shearer. And then a whole string of videos ensued where Brandon said, I have some kind of man-hating posse that gets together in DMs and finds men to hunt down and target. It was actually kind of laughable, as if I have time for that shit, so we got into it yet again and I blocked him in the end. Then he started mentioning me in DMs with creators. Months after any of this happened, I'm sure he still mentions me and KB in DMs because how dare we not boost his book, and that's what it boiled down to. He was like, what have you done to help me? Every time I see a video about him, it's just worse and worse. And I know he has weapons because he showed me a mag in a video before. So I won't engage with him at all ever again because I really feel like he's a guy who could stalk someone and turn violent. Every time I see him in people's comments, I am just more and more disgusted and leery of him. He's made some really disturbing comments of videos of creators he randomly finds, like the one where he tells a woman that men aren't afraid to walk down the street at night and that's why they carry weapons or are a living weapon. He told that same creator, who is in a science research program or something, that I didn't get a grant just because of what's between my legs. He went into a video of a woman who was talking about weaponized incompetence and used non-binary terms and made it all about misandry and how terrible women are, and then had several back and forth video exchanges with her. This is person number 3. I am absolutely not the only woman on Book Talk that this has happened to. He openly hit on KB and others. He would connect with us under the guise of men love romance too, and then beg us to signal boost or interact with his content because he wasn't getting the interaction he does on his military content, where probably 98% of his following is from. He would send random TikToks to us as if to speak up a conversation when what he wanted was to share his own shit to pad the algorithm. Whenever we call him out or try to educate him, he'd freak out on us and we'd instantly become the enemy. He had beef with Fairy Nerd because she openly called him out on his blatant misogyny and he got into a massive hissy fit over it. When the rest of us stepped in to make it clear what he had done wrong, we became the enemy. He would also talk shit about us on his personal page, which would then spark his ilk to come and mass report us. He would insult us constantly and say we did nothing to support him when we all wound up expending so much emotional energy on him. Eventually, we had all gotten sick of him and started to block him. He then attacked me after I pretty nicely asked him to stop messaging me on my backup page where I didn't realize we were still following each other. I first interacted with him during the Verba debacle, which by the way was a whole thing where some creators on TikTok were getting together to make a platform for audiobooks for self-published authors. I should probably do a video on this at some point. Anyways, moving on. Not sure why he was there because he wasn't reporting anything like I was, but he seemed like a nice person. It just got creepy so quickly and then it devolved into misogyny and incel behavior. He feels owed the attention of Book Talk because he's a man. And this person did show me some DMs, and for some reason Brandon made up this whole thing where she said that she would try to ruin him, which never happened as far as I can tell. This is person number 4. I don't have any specific examples at the moment. The best I can say is that he's like an abusive husband. He seems fine, but there are a lot of things that just add up until you realize he's been a bad guy from the beginning, but it was never too obvious. He bends logic to meet his standards, says he was in the military to gain compassion and get people on his side, and then spews misogynistic bullshit long enough to gaslight you onto his side. You have to look for it. You have to pay very close attention, but it's clear when you look. I fully agree with this person. I think person number 4 nailed it on the head because as I dove into this and like really went down the rabbit hole of Brandon Fero's TikTok, that is exactly what I saw. They continue, we gaslight ourselves into believing that the tiny red flags aren't a problem because he's nice one minute, or because he served in the military, or because he's been there for us. But the reality is he's a predator. He's been called out for things before, and he'll have a conversation with someone trying to help and turn it around so it looks like he was in the right. And then he'll convince himself after all that emotional labor that someone else put in to educate him that he was the one in the right the whole time. And after that, he'll use the buzzwords that he got from the person who was trying to educate him about their point, make it support his. The man is fucking dangerous. This is person number 5. He wasn't problematic during Verba. Again, that's the whole audiobook app that had a whole mess of drama surrounding it. He wasn't problematic during Verba, which was July-ish last year, which is how he got in with so many of us, as in women in Book Talk. He hosted several lives where we were all discussing it. It was when we went back to talking about diversity and inclusion topics that marginalized people experience that he showed his true colors. My last straw was when he tried to bait me with the whole Genghis Khan video during the reverse harem / why choose discussion. Side note, Book Talk was having a discussion at the time about how we should use why choose instead of reverse harem. And I watched him and his friend treat some author friends I know like garbage. It was stupid. I barely remember, but he was saying something about how Genghis Khan had a harem and he wasn't Muslim, so what's the big deal? And everyone was like, wow, Genghis, huh? That's your go-to, the bastion of morality? This is person number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6. I made a response to him complaining about authors being quote unquote attacked over continuing to use reverse harem instead of why choose, but an author friend of his wasn't being attacked at all. People were saying, okay, then I just won't buy your book. And then he sent his friends over to harass me in the comments, but I blocked them both and I don't have receipts anymore, which I don't care. Like, I feel very strongly that obviously all of these women cannot be lying. So I told them, I believe you, just tell me what happened and I will, uplift your voice even if I'm doing it anonymously. This is person number 7. It's been a while since I've interacted with Brandon, but it was all disappointing and frustrating in the end. He plays off that he is learning and growing and not being misogynistic, but then he reverts back. It's a lot of pandering and gaslighting. There are others who had major issues with him, but mine were all minor altercations. Simple things like pretending he didn't understand what women were saying. I have a few videos of me replying to his comments trying to get him to understand a different POV, but then he only argued that he's a man who writes romance and is persecuted for it. Eventually, a friend told me to stop putting emotional labor into him, and it hit me that I was, and it wasn't worth it. He also likes to latch onto people and then spam them in their DMs with his videos. It made me uncomfortable. Actually, most everything he did and said made me uncomfortable. This is person number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ah, frick, I lost count. I'm the worst with numbers. I don't know, 7 or 8. This is person number 7 or 8. I put up with him for a long time, but every interaction was him arguing, attacking, posting slights, and then apologizing. Most people I know blocked him quick, but I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt, my own stupidity. In the end, I called him out and I finally blocked him. I've had so many arguments with him, but the common theme was him jumping on a thread about misogynistic behavior with not all men, trying to act the nice guy while pulling focus from the actual issue. I called him out. He began spewing slights and personal attacks. I finally had enough and blocked him. He'd done it before, and then he'd delete his tirade and apologize, only to do it again a few weeks later. I've seen the abuse cycle before and had enough of it. This person knows that I've had run-ins with authors in the past that have not ended well for me, obviously, and they were nice enough to try to warn me about this, which I'm hoping that Brandon just leaves me alone and that this can just, get out to women who need to hear it and they can choose whether or not they want to block him and not engage. I'm not telling anybody to do anything other than that. That is my only goal. But they were nice enough to say, I will tell you a few things you might want to know. I know you had an issue with an author stalking you on Twitter. If you go down this road, Brandon will do the same thing, but louder and more ferally. That's not me trying to intimidate you. It's me concerned because I've seen what he does to people. I am one of his victims. With that said, Brandon is a self-proclaimed white Christian conservative nationalist. I put in hours and hours of trying to explain to him the fundamentals of interacting with femme book talk. He doesn't care. He's never cared. He wants the attention of caring, but not any of the work. I have all of our DMs. Another person also had the same experience with him. This person is not one of the 8 people I talked to. So there are at least a dozen people that this has happened to, and I only got like 10 of them to talk to me. He now goes on every single person who stitches or duets me to talk shit about me because I had the audacity to block him after he made comments about not caring about saving interracial and same-sex marriage. He didn't message me any sort of pickup lines because I made very clear from the jump that I was asexual, but we did discuss his treatment of women. I genuinely and honestly tried to explain to him things. I tried to educate him. I thought he wanted growth. He wanted clout. And when I found him on another creator's page, proudly proclaiming he was a white conservative Christian nationalist and didn't give a shit about interracial marriage or same-sex marriage, I was done. I couldn't keep justifying the long hours on lives explaining fundamental things to him, and now he stalks and harasses me on burner accounts, and every time anyone who hasn't already blocked him stitches me, he harasses them. I did get DMs between him and a creator, so I will show you some of them. He was talking about women being suspicious of men in the romance genre, or she was talking about women being suspicious of men in the romance genre, and he says, unfortunately, I've seen both sides of that. She says, expand, and he says, I've been misrepresented by a misogynist, by an erotica author who took a 16-hour-long Twitter PM conversation, screenshotted 3 lines of mine, and declared me a hateful man. I am 99% sure I know exactly who he's talking about. As usual, he brings up that he's a veteran, and then she starts talking about misogyny again, saying misogyny is a hard topic because I genuinely think 99.9% of men suffer from it. 75% of them don't realize it, but if they did, they change it. The rest know and don't care. They talked about what I hear is that YouTube pays more for views than TikTok. That is true. So to the person who came in my comments and was like, you could make money from TikTok. Why aren't you posting your whole content? No, I can't make money from TikTok. Are you bonkers? Not with long format content. So they're talking about books, right? And she's talking about like trying to balance characters, like men characters. And he says, you're speaking of his gentle moments outweighing the harsh ones. He came to her advice for her advice on writing. And she says, women in the reader world are rabidly protective of this space. They've always been. That's why there is the cliche of male pen named women. You have to show us you are safe. You have to show us that you are willing to listen. You aren't trying to commercialize our traumas, that you understand us. Male romance writers unfortunately have to work 10 times harder because of the douche canoes that have harmed so many women. And he says, because it takes a rather large fuckload of abuse and betrayal to get me to reach harshness. And she says, but that comes from anger. And he says, yeah, I've been traumatized too, infantilized and treated like scum. So being called baby killer and rapist and bootlicker for my time in Iraq, that makes the balance a little whack. I didn't have the language to understand why I was weird, but women want me to understand them. I try to understand them. I also want them to understand me, give and take. This is where it gets like red flaggy. So she says, well, you should write your trauma. Don't try to bolt boobs onto it. Write your trauma from a male perspective and how it gets navigated in a relationship. And he says, I can't. The fantasy of the romance man is a masculine man who has a feminine heart. Balance. And he says, well, I'm a masculine man with a masculine heart. So that idealistic thing needs to be taken into account. And she says, one of the things I've noticed also is that I don't see your book talked about by female readers a whole lot. Have you considered sending out post-reader copies? And he talks about how he quit his job and he doesn't have money to do that. And she says, love it or hate it, but you have two choices, swim easy or take the hard road. And he says, so female readers need to take a chance to read my works and supply me with feedback. Those who have are in Amazon and Goodreads. He says, she asked, do you have a digital copy or a Word document? And he said, yeah, I do. I also don't like the idea of it being poached and sold by a woman or a man with a pen name with a changed title. And I'm like, why didn't you just say another person? This is red flaggy. And then she gives him an idea of like how to work around that. And she gives him some ideas for people to talk to about the representation and the stuff within his book. And she brings up someone named Blue. He says, Blue knows me. She's very taken with queer and BIPOC representation. And she asks, can you expand on what you mean by this? And he said, Blue is very big on helping those communities right now. I asked once if she would have a look and she kindly declined. I respect the no. But the thing is, like, first of all, historical romance, like, you really have to find, that's kind of like a niche. And so you really, if you need feedback, you're really going to have to find somebody and pay. That's just it. But I'm sure he doesn't feel like he has to do that. She says, if you're serious about wanting to improve and write more for the feminine eye, use the best thing you already have. And he says, my heart and soul. And I'm like, no. What? My stupidly ADD brain? No. He says, I don't understand the writing for the feminine eye versus the masculine. Why not just write good stories? The both sides argument. She gives him ideas on how to reach out to TikTok and find people who are willing to offer honest feedback so that he can get better. And all he says is, And she finally answered about the whole writing for the feminine eye versus masculine. And she says, because you chose a genre that is predominantly written and consumed by the feminine eye, if you want out and to be excused from the feminine eye, switch the genre. So many of the genres have sex in them now and have a diverse reader base. He says, excused from the feminine eye, which I don't know what he's trying to say. And she says, is the concept of feminine gaze versus masculine gaze not a concept you're familiar with? And he said, I need to sleep on it. Okay. He says, I know the verbiage. He asked her some kind of red flaggy questions where at this point he was like, curious for your thoughts. Do you believe in meaningless sex? She said, divine meaningless. And he said, from an ace perspective, do you see it as a thing? That's what I was driving at. I'm curious if I'm mistaking this at this point, because frankly, I'm thinking people use the phrase to defend their own egos, that by calling it meaningless, they protect themselves from the repercussions of emotional damage. He talks about what's in his book, and some of it is like just just really, if I were his beta reader, if I were like sensitivity reading as a woman, or both, I would have told him to take this stuff out. I agree with her that using Maidenhead to talk about virginity is like, ugh. I don't love that he thinks he can have a conversation about purity culture when he has weird takes on women. I don't love that he wrote a scene where she ripped her hymen early and it doesn't heal back, so like she can't be tested for virginity. I don't really understand like why a man would write that kind of stuff, especially when he espouses certain other beliefs. I did have a patron look at his book and it kind of sounded like his book was dealing in the whole spicy, sexy Latina trope, and that's not good. So that probably could have used a sensitivity read, but from what I can gather from looking through Andrew? God, I'm tired. From Brandon's TikToks, it's just not looking like he's interested in having any sort of feedback from women, sensitivity readers, really anybody. He said some weird stuff about using certain terms. She says, like, don't use passive racist terms. He asked, what about the term hag? Is that problematic? And she said, it's annoying, but it's not problematic in the context you're talking about unless there's overtones of talking about Romani people. And then he goes on to talk about how he's talking about purity culture. And in one of these screenshots, he says, you do not want me putting an ultra hard man against a feminist in the 1800s and making her grovel for forgiveness. She really was so patient with him. She really was. And I deeply respect her for it, because I would have lost my patience so quickly in those DMs. So after reading all of their messages, I decided to deep dive. And what I found was this: patterns. Repeatedly, Brandon has beef with either women or men who say they're feminists. Those are the only two groups that he regularly spats with, and it is regularly. Here's some examples.
So first of all, I don't believe that for 1 second, because if he really...
You seriously are going to recommend Hannah Chan when Hannah Chan literally just put out a video saying this: let's talk about how to manipulate men. This chick has over 150,000 followers, and you're going to tell me that this sort of behavior, how to top from the bottom, this is the sort of healthy relationship advice that you all want to follow? And you say to us that misogyny is so blatant, but misandry is not so blatant, and it's only a reaction. How about you address me one-on-one?
You creepy as Brandon, you missed the point of the video. Women can't talk about Schmecks without somebody vilifying them, which is the whole point of the video, because it's going around again that if you read smut, you are depraved. Stupid stuff like that. Men being suspect. Yeah. I can tell you why. It's because men built the society that we live in, and that women are not safe in.
Well, he told me to have a listen, so I'm gonna have a listen to this man educate me.
How dare.
Man who can't even pronounce misogynist correctly.
Unafraid to walk home at night. We're not unafraid to walk home at night. We all carry weapons. Or we're a living weapon.
Perfectly healthy, normal thing to say that makes everyone around you super comfortable.
You don't know what I've experienced.
They just made this video a really cool thing. It's called therapy. You should try it. I think it would really help you.
It is prejudiced bullshit like that, where you take my words and say, I'm trying to silence you.
Because you were. Because I was also trying to stand up for men. I also said that, like, people of all genders can be victims of this.
Get grants just because we've got a dick.
Not all men, y'all. Not all men.
Some of us pay off our bills by our own sweat.
Yeah. Do you know that women can work too? Women can also sweat. We can also bleed. Women work, pay our bills.
Here's a fun fact. The average adult man has a 0.00021281% chance of being falsely accused of rape, but a 0.0003% chance of getting hit by a comet. Men are quite literally more likely to be hit by a comet than be falsely accused of rape. And yet they keep talking about it as if it's a massive issue we all need to be aware of. It isn't. The massive issue we all need to be aware of is the amount of sexual violence against women and girls. Here's a fun fact. The average adult man has a 0.0...
Katie, I'd like you to stop your misandrist BS for just 5 minutes and actually consider. You want men to treat women like human beings, but you will not extend the same back to us. Period. Go back to your corner, okay? Go back to Medium. Oh, by the way, my name's Brandon Fero. You might remember me commenting under some of your stuff in the past. Yeah, before I got banned from there. Because you claimed I was a woman hater. No, I don't hate women, and I don't have contempt for women. I just have contempt for certain women, particularly women like yourself who have an all-encompassing contempt for any man who disagrees with you. Welcome to TikTok, by the way. Very cool, since especially Willow Winters is at best a piss-poor actress for TikTok. At worst, she's a misandrist. And I was taken into her very early on when I first showed up on this app, and she accused me of being a user because I asked for her help to show off my war romance. Today, of course, I've blocked her by now, but if you happen to run into her, tell her Brandon Fero says hi.
Brandon regularly engages with, here's another pattern. He regularly engages in arguing by using what's called the tu quoque logical fallacy. Tu quoque in Latin means you too, or you also, or you do it too. And it's a tactic that intends to discredit your opponent and the argument that they're making by saying that they engage in hypocritical behavior, that they're doing what they say they don't want you to do. This is basically the entire foundation of men's rights activism. That's why it's a reactionary movement and ideology. It's like, oh yeah, women, well, you oppress men too, so what now? You will also see this in debates. I used to be vegan. I was vegan for 5 years and I debated a lot of non-vegans. And you'll see this in debates between vegans and non-vegans, where the non-vegan will say to the vegan, oh yeah, vegan, I hurt animals. Well, you are eating produce and a ton of bugs died so that you could have that produce on your plate. You do it too. Tu quoque, logical fallacy. It doesn't address the fact that harm is still happening. It just says, well, you're doing it too, so what now? Logical fallacy. So let's see some examples of Brandon doing this, because there's a ton.
But I will highlight when I see something absolutely stupid. All the boys who follow Andrew Tate, I just kind of shake my head at him and go, you're looking at the wrong role model, boys. The last I checked, no Bugatti's going to help you in the bedroom. And then I see those ladies and I go, your money, it's funny because they sound exactly like the men did. But I have a problem with activists. You don't put your money where your mouth is. Some of these radical feminists now, it's always the same. It's pushing rhetoric. You're not the one putting boots on ground.
People, if you don't actually read or engage with feminist literature, then you obviously won't know this. But radical feminism doesn't mean what you define it as. It has a definition. Simply Google search it. And it's not anything feminist that I disagree with and think is annoying. But that's not the definition of radical feminism. Anyway, carry on.
You're not the one going out there getting dirty or bloody. You're not the one putting yourself on the line. You're not the one starving, okay? You are on the opposite end of a screen. You type out a few words. You don't talk to anybody else except those who absolutely agree with you 100%. You sit there and you wave your little meme and your little flags. You maybe go to a parade sometime. You don't put anything back into your community. You don't give anything back to the very people who are hurt by the very engines of destruction you claim are destroying the world. That is the problem I have with activists. That rhetoric drives people to insanity. They bully people. They will bully people until people will lose all heart, all hope, all faith, and they will laugh about it. You say women are tired of being told not all men, and you're tired of men not doing anything to make things better. I do not control other men. I control me. I can give advice to my fellow men on how to treat a woman. Whether they pick that up and actually use it is on them. I can review romance because I love romance. I can write romance because I love romance. I can look at a persona like Andrew Tate and say, yeah, he's full of shit. But I can also look at somebody like Hannah or somebody else, one of these relationship experts out here, spewing nothing but toxicity and say they're full of shit. Sometimes Andrew Tate says something that is somewhat true, same as Hannah. But we all know that line, a broken clock is right twice a day.
When the fuck has Andrew Tate ever had a good take? Besides that one time where he said sexuality is a spectrum, even though he was still being a massive misogynist while saying that, by saying that the only women he sees as women are women who are beautiful like Megan Fox. Like, women are only women if they look a certain way. Name one wholly good take presented by Andrew Tate. I'll be waiting beyond the grave. Another pattern is he spends a significant amount of time telling the internet how badly women treat men, which is sort of in the vein of a tu quoque fallacy, but it gets its own part in the video because the amount of time he spends doing it is really fucking significant. He also gets really, and I mean really, upsetty spaghetti when any woman refers to him or talks about him in a particular way after he's made them uncomfortable.
I've been called many things. Creep happens to be a top trigger for me. So, yeah. That's the second woman in a week to call me creep. I must be getting to y'all. You know, throughout my time on social media, even when I had nothing and I started writing my books, I was doxxed. I was spurned. I was mocked. Because I'm a guy. And because I was a soldier. I was as open and honest as I could with just about everybody from my perspective. And apparently my authenticity comes off wrong to y'all because I'm a guy.
But let's pivot back to the MRA stuff specifically, because that's really what I'm here about. And that the MRA stuff is specifically why I consider the situation to be a possible escalating situation that could end in danger.
So I want to talk about some comments that I found of
Brandon's that were not videos, just comments, and they gave me some red flags, so I thought that I would show them so that you can sort of get a full context of like who this guy is and how he's a men's rights activist. He tries to separate himself from people like Andrew Tate, but then denies that people like Andrew Tate are a problem when people bring up, well, I'll just read it to you. So in this case, he says, show me one popular creator with millions of followers that wants women to be slaves. Somebody says Andrew Tate, literally any of his followers. Like, I don't understand how that didn't come to mind for Andrew. But then again, when you're not a woman worried about people like Andrew Tate, I guess it's easy to forget. He says to a woman, the way you don't see the irony of how you refuse to empathize with a man who points out that women base their opinions on sexist ideologies is the issue. He continues on with his theory that social media promotes contempt for men. He answers regarding Andrew Tate saying Tate is a personality, a fighter, and a business owner. His accounts were banned. Show me one here on TikTok. And it's like, okay, but Tate ran a trafficking ring and his own fucking website taught others how to do it. Like, those very successful things on social media regarding Andrew Tate were created by men who worked at Andrew Tate's house. Even though he was not on social media anymore, his videos were, and that translated into getting even kids, young boys as young as 14 to sign up for Hustlers University. Like, that translates into real life harm against women. So Brandon comes back with, you showed me one abusive man. Now how many takes are made of hating men that are popularized on social media and not considered abusive? Tells me everything about you that you select Tate as a fucking paragon for man. I don't follow Tate. And they go to him because masses of women flock to creators like Willow or others who promote contempt for men in all shapes and sizes. I love that I can always tell who I trust and who I don't trust based on the Drew Affuello test. Every single time, if a man tells me that he doesn't like Drew Affuello, immediately red flag, immediately red flag. You know who loves Drew Affuello? My husband. My husband does. And that's why my husband is always a green flag. So obviously Tate, they go to him because masses of women flock to creators like Affuello. So I think, I can't say for sure, but it sounds like he's trying to make the case that because women flock to creators like Drew Affuello who promote contempt for men, that's why men and boys are going to Andrew Tate, which is simply not true. And he compares the two, saying, I think it's more of the same: abuse, manipulation, excuses, guilt trips, gaslighting, and interpersonal relationships. He says, you apparently don't have the fucking wherewithal to recognize how often men get doxxed by women under manipulation. You don't have the intestinal fortitude to own up to contempt and hatred being more popular because it would mean it's unjustified. Then you would need to treat individual men with more care. When men stand up and say a woman's take is manipulative, they can be labeled a misogynist and told they're the problem. If we're doing it equal, I as a man can denounce sexism from women and speak to them as an equal. Learn that women are tired of being told how we revolve around y'all. We don't. We're humans. Grow up and start caring someday soon. Otherwise, be gone. And this person says, women responding to misogyny is not misandry. You guys call everything misandry these days. Can't even breathe in a man's direction anymore. And he brings up being neurodivergent anytime he gets flack, saying, no, my neurodivergent brain doesn't know sea lioning other than it being a stupid phrase once a coin used once a couple years by a rad femme terrorist. I only brought this up because Andrew loves, why do I keep calling him Andrew? Brandon loves the name rad femme, but he doesn't actually know what radical feminism is because he doesn't actually know anything about feminism. All he knows is that he hates it. And I can tell because I have deep dived into his social media. And the fact that this man has never once Googled the term rad femme to find out what rad femme actually is hilarious to me, because it's just showing that he doesn't have an ounce of concern for actually being correct. He just has nothing but hate for anything labeled feminism. And he's like, I am going to call anything that I don't like radical feminism because radical feminism sounds bad, when radical feminism is actually like a type of feminism. It's a particular subset of feminism that like has a deep history. It's called radical because it's going down to the root, not because they're acting wild. But Brandon doesn't know that because Brandon didn't utilize Google even once in his research. I read romance novels and I write them. I've talked with hundreds of women in my lifetime. I know the female perspective. I'm gonna call bullshit there, my guy. And yet those same generalizations were used by women to paint me as a misogynist in hit job pieces in the past on this very app. I'm still trying to find out where he was doxxed. I literally can't find it. Blah, blah, blah. Unwilling to admit, men get told they're stupid for thinking independently and calling men and women out equally. Do you call men and women out equally? Because I feel like you call out more women and the only men you call out are feminist men. To diminish contempt for men, harassment of men and manipulation of men by women for the sake of popularity or power and money is just as wrong as, God, I fucking hate the way TikTok sets up their comments. You already have a man in your life, so why are you complaining about me and my experience in life other than to diminish me? You are not oppressed, and you don't deserve to have anything just handed over because your thrice great-grandma might have suffered in poverty. Wow. Yikes. Misogyny and misandry have always existed. They are codependent on each other. No, they are. Oh my God. This is such a bad take. Oh God, that's painful. Oh, I forgot how stupid that was. Okay. Wow. Rereading it was like, oh my gosh, I just lost brain cells. No, this is not it. They are not codependent on each other. It's not true. A cycle of abuse you continue with your own prejudice. The video was about men and women. Women only want their issues raised, but don't want to acknowledge men's. That's interesting because I'm pretty sure that feminist praxis includes men and talking about how patriarchy is very hard on men as well. It's almost as if Bell Hooks, revolutionary feminist way ahead of her time, wrote entire books, not just one, on this entire subject. But instead of researching even a little bit, Brandon has this take. Even in a video talking about misandry, I am so sick of all of you dismissing fellow women's toxicity while calling others pygmies, but demanding always acknowledge your problems first. You want us to help you, but you will not help us. That's the end-all be-all of your goddamn argument. Warrior Philosopher isn't a woman. This is his video addressing both contemptuous behavior from the gender wars. Now that sounds like a YA novel from 2010. I'm no Bundy, so how is the one toxic behavior made more acceptable? Oh, I just wanted this because I'm not Bundy. If you have to say you're not Ted Bundy, something's up. Not cool. The basis of the argument is which toxic behavior is made more acceptable. Neither should be. It's not funny. I don't treat misogyny as a joke, but complaining about misandry is shown to be more easily hated and thrown under the bus of misogyny. So don't construe that a woman's issue trumps men's issues when both are spoken about in the same video. As I said, both issues were addressed in this video, so it's not just women. A single example on TikTok, and my argument is that women are popularized more in social media for being angry with men than the opposite. So now what? Okay, so now what? Allow me to answer this, though I hope Brandon's not actually here listening to this. Allow me to answer this for any of you who might be interested in an answer from a feminist woman. Let's take somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, yeah? And let's say she goes on social media and she says something like, men are trash. Yeah, sure, she is going to get some comments being like, yes, oh my gosh, totally agree, right? Yeah, she's going to get some on social media. She's also going to get threats to her literal life, threats of rape. That's a fact. And in fact, she already gets those anyway, just for being a Latina woman who is not on the right and who is outspokenly for justice, for marginalized communities, and critiques capitalism. It's a very dangerous place for her to be in. And she is lucky that she's still alive, in my opinion. And they will actively try to come for her job. They will actively try to get her removed from her job, undoubtedly. On the flip side of that, somebody, a man perhaps, can say that he literally grabs women by the pussy and then get elected to the highest position of authority in this country. So now what? There are dozens of lady TikTokers that put out manipulation in their videos, like the one I just stitched on my page, K thanks. It's really like you watched and absorbed the video to be right. I'm tired of women accusing me of shit I didn't do for likes. It doesn't take a lot for y'all to paint a man like myself as a misogynist, even when I've never hated a woman as a whole. Y'all spend so much time researching murder and serial killers while men research gold diggers and manipulators. Yeah, he actually said that. Isn't that wild? I had to read it 3 times to really set that in. He actually said that on the internet for other people to see. I'm just a combat veteran and a writer. I have no interest in becoming some heinous POs that gets a documentary about how fucked in the head he is. Well, I mean, then I would stop making these comments, my guy. You have bodily autonomy. This person said, you mean the last 50 years where we turned back the clock and women now have no bodily autonomy? You have bodily autonomy. Thanks for proving that your perspective is warped that far you think you're a slave to someone. Brandon, that's simply not true, my guy. I don't think you know much about laws pertaining to abortion. Guess who does? That'd be me. God, I hope he's not actually here listening to this. So after Roe v. Wade was overturned because of trap laws and because of, not trap laws, trigger laws, because of trigger laws and also because of legislation that was going to be put into effect after the passing, I think 30 days after the passing of Roe v. Wade, 50% of uterus having persons are now in a position where it is nearly impossible in the United States for them to achieve an abortion. So I don't know who the fuck he thinks he's talking to right here, but I hope it's not a US person because there's a 50-50 shot that they don't actually have bodily autonomy to make the decision to go get an abortion if they're in the United States. Thank you so much. You have explained your bias and given me the same talking points a dozen other feminist accounts gave. I was rejected for being a combat veteran from everything but a low-paid security guard for over a decade. You didn't sleep on the floor of an apartment and starve for 3 years. So I don't want to hear about how your trials were so hard when I have gone through just as much. Restudy your history and you'll find women fighting the fight for their causes, for nations, for family. But God forbid y'all own that and then realize the contempt your popular accounts give out are worth keeping on their high horse. Lady, you keep picking on my book without considering I said I had been harassed, groped, and manipulated. Yeah, because women weren't pioneers or in homesteads or fighting off natives. Oh my God, Brandon, what the hell, man? Or working on board ships. Jesus, I am really disturbed by this part. What the fuck is wrong with you? I don't know where you live that you're forced to give birth. Last I checked, women still have abortion rights in most of the USA. 50%, Brandon. What reality are you living in? My God, do you ever speak to a woman? Maybe revisit your own bias while you get back to your man. And men and women in power are innocent and totally perfect in handling their power. Is that what you're gonna say? I don't even need the context for these. Like, they're just fun to read. Quit spamming and get back to your man. You have a man. Stay with him and stay off this subject until you acknowledge it's all a shit sandwich of toxicity. What do we call the female gaze with Loki? Men hate being weak, not dislike, hate. Being bullied and being put out and laughed at and derided is a source of shame and a source of anger for us. Wait, who the hell created that reality for y'all, Brandon? God, I really hope he's not here listening to this. But Jesus Christ, like, who do men think that created that reality? Other men. And y'all could collectively decide not to buy into it anymore. Jesus, as if this is women's problems. These militaries are institutions that feel so unchangeable. I wonder if our feminist boys will change them. I fear, right, he's quoting something. I fear they will change our feminist boys. I believe there are good men in every institution, but the culture of the military is antithetical to feminism. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of nuance to that subject, but basically, yeah, like the culture of the military is not really the problem. The existence of the military is the problem. And I say that as somebody who, again, was a military spouse. And Brandon's responding to that saying, in this view, a feminist wants your men to be more emotional, but we military are trained to have discipline in high stress situations on the fly. There's no time for social work in a war zone when you're on the X. Irony, a man's first instinct, designed and engineered by both our society and our history, is to protect and provide. I'm pretty sure that's just like a human thing. It's not a man's thing. It's a human, especially if you have kids. Like that's kind of my instinct with my kids. I don't think Brandon has kids, so I don't think he relates to that. Anyway, moving on. It is designed by a society. At least we agree on one thing. The thing about this is that I do want. It's the way he said this is so weird because it's like emotional, derogatory. But the thing about emotional is I do advocate for boys and men to have emotional intelligence, and I think that the culture of the military would be better if they did prioritize emotional intelligence, and some sects of the military are prioritizing that in an effort because they've seen how high the suicide rates are while people are active duty, as well as how high the sexual assault rate is, as well as how high the divorce rate is. So yeah, maybe if we would prioritize emotional intelligence,
then the culture of the military would be better. But I don't think anybody should be at war. So like, this is just like, oh no, like we're not going to have people who are able to go to war. Oh no, like, oh no, we're not going to be off fighting other people's wars and dying in an emotionally distraught state that we've had to like basically brainwash ourselves, particularly men, into not feeling. Like, that's fucked.
He talks about a lot about misogyny. He also talks a lot about misandry. Typically saying that he's mad that women are calling him or someone else a misogynist, typically him. But he does this thing where it's like a big red flag, where he tries to differentiate himself from other people who he sees as being actual or real misogynists. He calls these people who are doing this other shit that he thinks is bad the real misogynists. Take a look.
Ladies, meet a real misogynist. The Allies raped children, men, and women. Russians, women only. 3 million women in World War II. 3 million. That was just between 1944 and 1945. We don't even know what happened prior to then. We just have an estimate. So you can take your real misogyny and your true bias, shove it up your fourth point of contact, and clear out there, son.
Guy that can't get laid, so he fantasizes about violence against women.
No, that's not a man. That's a coward. That's what that is. Love how they always go behind an anonymous account. It's the same thing as when people call me baby killer. Or they call me rapist. So they're like that. Private accounts, anonymous accounts, easily disposable. Not real people. Not in the real sense. There's no moral fiber there. And it's funny, because even the hardest of the hard in prison will attest that anyone found out to be a child molester or a rapist, well, they end up in a really bad way. But as for normal men, authentic men, what we see is somebody we'd stop cold with a hollow point.
And the real nail in the coffin for this case that I'm making, that this dude is an MRA, being wrong about the history of and the current systems of oppression of women and also of men. MRAs typically are incorrect about a lot of their information. They just sort of like regurgitate the same talking points amongst each other. I'm not saying that sarcastically. It is a fact, which I will dive into after I show you some examples of Brandon doing this.
Single men either cannot afford or are taught not to go see a doctor because they're told that it is unmanly to admit when one is sick. How often are you told by your boss, you have to come into work? So there's your reason. Women were just given carte blanche to allow themselves to go see a doctor more regularly because many men in the past used to say, well, they're the weaker sex, we have to let them go to the doctor. So women were taught from an early age to go see the doctor even if they got a hangnail. So boys, if you're having trouble, especially in health-wise, make sure you go see the doctor, all right? I understand. I get it. Women are not defined by their role to a man anymore. They're not a wife. They're not just a sister. They're not just a mother. You know, they are defined by themselves. They are human beings in and of themselves. I was raised up that way anyway. However, this is not how that phrase of evolving past men is used in the popular social media context. It is always used from a position of quote-unquote superiority. To your second point about Mona Lisa Smile Roberts and women entering colleges but being expected to marry a rich husband. That was a thing. Yes, that was a thing at one point. Not so much anymore, but there are a few outliers out there who are gold diggers or who are hunting that STEM husband that they can, then become a stay-at-home mom. Point 3, you say how women are not expected to stay in the workforce as long as men, and thus that is where the wage gap comes from, because women aren't paid while they're, if they're on pregnancy leave and whatnot. Now that's subject. Yes, I agree. Women should be paid, especially if they're able to work remotely. They should be paid a living wage, and they should also be covered so that they can actually give birth to the child and have the support for at least half a year after the baby's born to be able to provide, especially if they are, and this is the other part, is the fact that, as you said, men are expected to work through it. That's the sucky part of being a dude. You don't get to stay at home and take care of that child.
Also, a lot of people assume that it was only women who were executed. It very much depends on area. There are some jurisdictions where more men were accused and executed of witchcraft than there were women, though in general, across the entire geographic area where you see witchcraft persecutions during this period, there were many more women than there were men who were...
I can't play this because it's music and I'm going to get copyrighted, but basically it's just this video of somebody who pulls up, they found out about the Hoops and Heels Act, which is it's a not true, historical myth about women having to not wear lipstick anymore because the British Parliament said that it had the ability to seduce men. That never happened. And Brandon's like, no, it never happened. And I am so confused about why he took time out of his life to do that, but this is typical men's rights activists, where it's like, if anything about women's history gets brought up and I can prove that women were not oppressed this one time, I'm going to make sure I say so. And it does talk about the PolitiFact article, which he doesn't say anything in this video, which is so funny, but he says the closest thing such a law came in June 7th, 1650, talking about immodest dress, and it talks about immodest dresses of women, and that's about it. But it's like, this is this is such a weird thing to make a TikTok about, but not if you're a men's rights activist. So it's right on brand with being an MRA and wanting to make sure that you let everybody know, hey, there was a time when women were not actually oppressed with their dress. Just that one time, so you know.
Men's rights activists have tried to, are like lobbying to try to redefine sexism to include misandry. One very popular MRA site is avoiceformen.com, which says it has a mission to expose misandry on all levels of our culture and denounce the institution of marriage as unsafe and unsuitable for modern man, as well as promote an end to chivalry in any form or fashion and educate men and boys about the threats they face in feminist governance. They also want to end rape hysteria, which I have seen Brandon react to. A Voice for Men does support nonviolence, but in a patriarchal society where violence against women is so normalized and men are being taught by Voice for Men that women are oppressing them, combine those two things together and I would say that that's going to end in violence for women. They constantly hand out these like faulty statistics saying there's no glass ceiling, there's no pay imbalance. Spousal abuse against men is just as high as spousal abuse against women, and saying that women are privileged because they're given basically like affirmative action type thing where they're given things just because they're women. In Canada, men's rights activists made headlines because they responded to an anti-sexual assault campaign called Don't Be That Guy, reacting by, instead of addressing that problem, they were like, oh yeah, women, well you suck too. To quote Ideological fallacy, as MRAs always do, they put up all these posters implying that women aren't punished enough for infanticide and called them Don't Be That Girl. As you can see, this is an entirely reactionary ideology. They also absolutely believe that women are making false rape statements over and over and over. And it's interesting to me how angry Brandon got when a woman pointed out that a man is more likely to be hit by a meteor than be falsely accused of rape.
Here's a fun fact. The average adult man has a 0.00021281% chance of being falsely accused of rape, but a 0.00033% chance of getting hit by a comet. Men are quite literally more likely to be hit by a comet than be falsely accused of rape. And yet they keep talking about it as if it's a massive issue we all need to be aware of. It isn't. The massive issue we all need to be aware of is the amount of sexual violence against women and girls. Here's a fun fact. The average adult man has a 0.0...
Katie, I'd like you to stop your misandrist BS for just 5 minutes and actually consider. You want men to treat women like human beings, but you will not extend the same back to us. Period. Go back to your corner, okay? Go back to Medium. Oh, by the way, my name's Brandon Fero. You might remember me commenting under some of your stuff in the past. Yeah, before I got banned from there. Because you claimed I was a woman hater. No, I don't hate women, and I don't have contempt for women. I just have contempt for certain women, particularly women like yourself who have an all-encompassing contempt for any man who disagrees with you. Welcome to TikTok, by the way.
He got very viscerally angry at that. Why? MRAs focus in and criticize gender equality, women's rights. They believe that women are disadvantaging men, that feminism is a push to further disadvantage men. And that's why, part of why I believe that Brandon is an MRA, and that's why he viscerally hates feminists so much and goes out of his way to find them and argue with them, poorly, using logical fallacies. They believe that they are victims of employment, the women are getting their jobs, they're victims of family law, even though most custody cases are decided out of court and agreed upon by both parties. They also say weird stuff about health that is not true, as you can see Brandon said, where he's like, women has always been encouraged to go to the doctor over any little thing, even a hangnail. Sir, I have several books on my shelf about the history of health for women that say otherwise. My great grandma was strapped to a bed and blindfolded when she had my ancestors. So I don't think you know what you're talking about. And that's just white women. Women of color, even worse, experimented on. Where do you think we got birth control research like this? Oh, I need to, whew. They cherry pick studies that have methodological flaws. They ignore any critiques of these studies because, again, their entire purpose is to be reactionary and ignore facts because they simply don't want to engage with truth of patriarchy. Anti-feminists will often talk about how the culture is man-hating and the media is dominated by anti-male stances and content. But women are still far underrepresented compared to men in media. Men are depicted in a wider range of behaviors from women. There are as many men who play heroes as well as villains. Most media control and ownership is in the hands of men. Media content continues to prioritize sexist stereotyping and male dominance. And women characters are more likely to be portrayed inside the home than men are, and without a paid job. But listen, men and boys are treated like shit under patriarchy. I agree. But the answer is not to say, oh, women are doing it too, so fuck off. Like, hello? You cannot have your patriarchy cake and eat it too. You have to address that you are part of the system too. So am I. You have to critically analyze the system and choose to see where you are taking part in it, even if you are also harmed by it. I am treated poorly because of patriarchy. As a woman, I've been, treated in sexist ways. It's just the name of the game, right? But I can also take part in patriarchy because I have 2 young sons. And by using the same lessons that I was taught under patriarchy and taking those and passing them on to my sons, using patriarchy's lessons and its standards to cause future and current harm to my kid, who I currently hold power over, that's something that I need to see and be accountable for. It's my responsibility to recognize that and choose not to continue on those patterns. That is something that I have power in, and I need to choose to do right with power. And you know who talks about this at length? Bell Hooks. May she rest in peace. Bell Hooks saw patriarchy. Specifically, she talks about the white cis hetero capitalist patriarchy, imperialist capitalist patriarchy, as a problem that affects all people to varying degrees. And we do not dismantle it, and we do not stop this harm by ignoring that it affects men too, surely, or ignoring how women take part in it. Sure, that can be talked about and addressed. So when I see men shitting on women's rights and feminism and activism in general, I know that not only is, in fact, men's rights activism simply a reactionary movement and not something they care deeply about seeing change for, I know that they do not truly care about women or men, but Bell Hooks did. From The Will to Change, which I'm now going to reference out the wazoo, men do oppress women. People are hurt by rigid sexist role patterns. These 2 realities coexist. Male oppression of women cannot be excused by the recognition that there are ways men are hurt by rigid sexist roles. Feminist activists should acknowledge that hurt and work to change it. It exists. It does not erase or lessen male responsibility for supporting and perpetuating their power under patriarchy to exploit and oppress women in a manner far more grievous than the serious psychological stress and emotional pain caused by male conformity to rigid sexist role patterns. It is my belief that the only reason that men's rights activists are not feminists and are not working for the liberation of all is because they have a complete unwillingness to take responsibility. It is because their priority is not actually giving a shit. They could do both. Recognize that there are issues that hurt men and boys, though I don't think the ones that they recognize as issues, and take responsibility for the part that they play in oppressing others. But without that second part, they will remain stuck and making bad faith tu quoque fallacies on TikTok. In the book, it says, "This book is about our need to live in a world where women and men can belong together. Looking at the reasons patriarchy has maintained its power over men in their lives, I urge us to reclaim feminism for men, showing why feminist thinking and practice are the only way we can truly address the crisis of masculinity today. In these chapters, I repeat many points that each chapter alone will convey the most significant ideas of the whole. Men cannot change if there are no blueprints for change. Men cannot love if they are not taught the art of loving." As a mom of 2 boys, this book really, and that section right there, hits home for me in particular. I feel that very strongly that is a call to action for me. It is what are you doing? What are you doing to stop this? because it is my job to create men who are taught the art of loving. If my, boys end up identifying as men at all, it's my job to stop that cycle either way. And Hook's book has been so formative for me in my parenting, but also it's been formative for me in my relationship with my husband, who I will cry when I talk about him because I love him so much, sorry. Giving compassion and understanding to him, because he grew up in a home rife with this patriarchal dogma and these standards of masculinity that he has had to do the work to unlearn so that we don't pass that on to our boys. And he's a huge fan of Bell Hooks as well. So we're trying very hard using Bell Hooks' book to create a home where masculinity and femininity are presented in ways that break those cycles for our kids. And Hooks says, to create loving men, we must love men. Loving men is different from praising and rewarding men for living up to sexist-defined notions of men's identity. Caring about men because of what they do for us is not the same as loving men for simply being. When we love men, we extend our love whether men are performing or not. Performance is different from simply being. In patriarchal culture, men are not simply allowed to be who they are and to glory in their unique identity. Their value is always determined by what they do. In an anti-patriarchal culture, men do not have to prove their worth. They know from birth that simply being gives them value, the right to be cherished and loved. Don't want to teach my boys that they have to put on this masculine performance in order to meet a standard so that they will be valued. I just want them to know that they are valued as is, and they do not have to perform any sort of gender role in order to be loved by me. And yes, my husband has responsibility here too, but even as a woman, I still have power over my kids, so do I. We both have to see where we were taught, even by women in our own lives, to uphold patriarchal standards and then form a game plan that does not do that, because I'm not exempt from perpetuating harm. And I can acknowledge that. Can men's rights activists do the same? And this is why I find them dangerous. We need to highlight the role women play in perpetuating and sustaining patriarchal culture so that we will recognize patriarchy as a system women and men support equally, even if men receive more rewards from that system. Dismantling and changing patriarchal culture is work that men and women must do together. This is like the whole thing, right? That's the whole thing. Men's rights activists like Brandon Fero want to present this whole, it's both sides treat each other shitty. Unfortunately, it is skewed slightly, sometimes a lot, in favor of particularly white, cis, hetero men. It is. That's how patriarchy is. But I do have my responsibilities to play, and I want to encourage men's rights activists to leave this ideology, accept that accountability, and work with me so that we can raise a generation of kids who don't have to deal with this, who can change those systems. But the system is patriarchy, and if we do not name it, acknowledge it, and all hold each other accountable for it, then we are all wasting our time. People from all walks of life can uphold patriarchy, and Bell Hooks talks about this. How much power we have decides how much harm we can do, surely, but all of us can in some ways uphold patriarchy, which causes harm to others. Hooks talks about this, saying most gay men are as sexist in their thinking as are heterosexuals. Their patriarchal thinking leads them to construct paradigms of desirable sexual behavior that is similar to that of a patriarchal straight men. And these power dynamics are frustrating to even admit, right? That they are there, because when you've been treated like shit, you don't want to say, I still have power. You don't want to admit where you still have privilege. That's just how humans typically are, and I get it. But loving all people and really giving a shit about actively working towards change means examining where you have privilege. And those privileges do give you power over others. And if we speak up about them, that is the first step in dismantling these systems of harm that we are both empowered by and hurt by. A patriarchy, it makes it so that it's very hard to let go of this idea that a dominator model, that somebody being in charge is good. That's something we really have to unlearn, and Bell Hooks talks about this. When culture is based on a dominator model, not only will it be violent, but it will frame all relationships as power struggles. I feel for MRAs like Brandon, I do. When they say they've been hurt, it's actually quite conflicting for me. Watching them lash out towards women and also men who are feminists, because I want them to get better. I want to acknowledge their pain, but I also want them to acknowledge mine and acknowledge the problem and see where they are perpetuating it. But I am willing to do the work as well, and I acknowledge, like, when I see them talking about the harm that they have been caused in systems, I don't need to react in the way that MRAs do, where I say, well, I'm harmed too. In the book it says, many women cannot hear male pain about love because it sounds like an indictment of female failure. And I think that MRAs are feeling like that too. When women talk about how they've been oppressed, they're like, oh, I'm a failure. Nope, I can't have that. I don't want that accountability. I try to keep this in mind when I'm listening to MRAs speak, but I admit it's so fucking frustrating that they never give us the same courtesy. And when we say you're being a misogynist, they say, no, I'm not. You do it too. The real misogynists are over there. But doing my part in not upholding patriarchy means always keeping in mind that the reason MRAs are like this is because of rigid sexist gender roles. It's a really tough spot for me to be in, to watch this stuff happen. Artemis, stop it. I don't want to stay angry because I don't want that to permeate my parenting, which I'm trying to make the opposite situation of what MRAs have had. In the book it says, learning to wear a mask, that word already embedded in the term masculinity, is the first lesson in patriarchal masculinity that a boy learns. He learns that his core feelings cannot be expressed if they do not conform to the acceptable behaviors sexism defines as male. Asked to give up the true self in order to realize that patriarchy ideal, boys learn self-betrayal early and are rewarded for these acts of soul murder. When I think about it this way, I do have some compassion for MRAs, though I have very little patience and I don't give them any room. And sometimes I'm like, that's enough speaking. I've had enough. Because I end up still being so exhausted by them as a woman. Because once again, I feel like I am doing the emotional labor. And I feel like KB probably felt that way in her interactions with Brandon. And a lot of women did, where it was like, you say something, Brandon comes for you, he calls you a misandrist, you point out the obvious misogyny, and then you have to do so much labor in educating him only for him to not change. And that's what so many of these women said. And I already have to do so much labor, not only in dealing with men presently in my life, but also trying to teach my kids to not end up this way. In patriarchal culture, males are not allowed to simply be who they are and to glory in their unique identity. Their value is always determined by what they do. In an anti-patriarchal culture, males do not have to prove their value and worth. They know from birth that simply being gives them value, the right to be cherished and loved. Bell Hooks' books make me feel very hopeful. She encourages us to not become discouraged as we do this work. It also encourages me that I have a husband who is actively going out of his way to do this work for himself, but also for me and for our kids, and that gives me a lot of hope. In our rapidly changing society, we can only count on two things that will never change. What will never change is the will to change and the fear of change. It is the will to change that motivates us to seek help. It is the fear of change that motivates us to resist the very help we seek. That's from Harriet Lerner, The Dance of Intimacy, that Bell Hooks quotes in The Will to Change. So here's how I want to wrap this up. Read Bell Hooks. I read 3 Bell Hooks books and I love every single one of them, but this one on masculinity is my favorite because it is the one that I think about daily. As a mom of boys, as a woman in the book talk community, in the booktube community, in the book community online, as a daughter of a dad that I don't talk to anymore, as a sister to a very patriarchal older brother. But it's not just for women. Just like feminism is for everybody, so is this book. I feel like we all have a duty to ourselves and to each other to do better and pay more than lip service to these issues that are affecting us all. That being said, I wanted to talk about men's rights activism in general, but in the particular case of Brandon Fero, what women I think should do is arm yourselves with knowledge and choose to make boundaries and know that your boundaries are valid and you are not required to play respectability politics with men's rights activists. Brandon Fero is just one dude, sure, but he's affected a lot of women, and for that reason I highly encourage any woman, anyone trying to avoid these extremely unpleasant interactions to block him. But he's not an isolated case. He won't be the last men's rights activist in the book community. He won't be the last men's rights activist who writes books, even romance books. And I know that in his book there's some weird stuff about Latino women and about virginity and about American imperialism. This is not surprising to me at all considering his TikToks, but his men's rights activism is what is concerning to me. Men who think like this are everywhere, and the best thing we can do to combat these harmful ideologies is to arm ourselves with knowledge and understanding so that we can do better in dismantling patriarchy. Yes, that does mean that because men's rights men's rights activists are creating more labor for us. Shocker. Keep yourselves protected from men who will put you in uncomfortable positions in your DMs, wherever. You do not have to take that as a woman. You can balance out wanting to do better for men as a feminist while also protecting yourself, because men are still killing women a lot of the time. Keep yourself protected, arm yourselves with knowledge, block who you need to block, don't go on lives with people, don't feel like you have to capitulate to men just because you feel like you need to be the nice one because you're a woman, okay? Oh, and men love romance too, I guess. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you wanna. Leave your comments down below. Anything from men's rights activists doing men's rights activists talking points, I'm gonna delete it. Go read bell hooks. I've done enough labor for y'all today, okay? Not in my comments. Also, this video is not for Brandon Fero. It's not. So I should have said this earlier. It's not for you. If you show up, I'm deleting your shit. I don't want to hear it. This video is for women who I'm trying to protect and also trying to have a conversation about a book that I think you might want to read, my guy. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave your comments down below, unless you're certain people. Okay, like and subscribe if you want. See you next time. Bye. Also, ban the fascists, not the books.
Did you also call women M-lady in high school? For those in Europe or Australia or Japan, that's secondary school. I assume M-lady, you mean M-lady, as in M-I-L-A-D-Y? You know how one would refer to a lady of Le Bon Ton or the Beaumont.
Hello, it's me, Trash Can Rachel, and I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Allie Magpie, Amanda, Ashley, Chris, Claire, Des Roberts, DJ Krimmer, Emperor's New Blues, Eric, Harley, Jack and Jill, John E, Casey McKenzie, Kelly K, Quinn, Lex, Lula, Miss Kittybug, Molly, Not Very Alice, Witch Bitch, Rain, Scarlett, SJ, Samar, Shiny, Sierra, and Zachary. Thank you all so much for being a friend.
Before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxists patrons, and those are AM Angel, Aiden, Alexander, Alicia, Amanda, Amanda B, Andy, Angelica, Anita, Artie the Ninth, Ashley, Ava, BB, Blythe, Bookish Barbie, Ray, Bryn, Caitlin, Carlin, Catherine, Kathy, Celia, Cheyenne, Chris, CJ, Corwin, Corey, Darren, Deandra, Deborah, Diet Goth, Dorian, Dorothea, Douglas, Ebby, Eden, Elise, Elia, Ember, Emily A, Emily L, Faith, Grace, Gracie, Hannah C, Hannah T, Ilianaka, India Inks, JM, Jay is on Olympus, JT, Jen with 2 N's, Jenny, Jillian, Jules, Kaylee, Kat, Katya, Keely, Kumi, Kylie, L. Lindbergh, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura, Lauren B, Library of Scars, Liz Cardigan, Luna Moth, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Maddie, Marcella, Marquita, Melara, Moog, Morgan R, Moth, James, Nat, Natalie, Never, Nicole R, Nicole T, Nikki, Nyan Binary, Paige E, Paige P, Peggy Lou, Pixel Stars, Pierre Raytheon, Pocket, Quill, Rachel B, Raquel, Rat Sarah, Reba, Rebecca, Ren, Robin L, Rowan, Other Rowan, Samantha, Sarah, Scarlett, Shanae, Shannon, Shayna, Sheena K, Sean, Stephanie, Steven, Talia, 3 Old Dogs, Tiana, Trash Can Teddy, Sev, Valentine, Ryder A, and Yesenia. Thank you all so much for being a friend.